That's the entry start.
Mayor Jacobs,
Across the road.
I'm here.
Committeeman Hickey,
Here.
Mr. Travellini,
Here.
Mr. Lean,
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Here.
Mr. DeJonine. Here. Mr. Walter.
Here.
Mr. First.
Here.
Miss Christie is not here yet, but I believe she's coming. Chairwoman Guttoff.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk, sent to the Bernardsville News and the Courier News, and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on January 6th, 2023.
Please stand for the flag salute.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll open it up to the public, if anyone is here. It's not on the agenda tonight. Do you have any guests online? Any?
I believe we have Matt. Nancy is right there, and the court reporter, so no, we have no one besides the applicant online.
Okay, good. I see no one from the public, so we will close it for now. Okay, we have the minutes to approve from October 12th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You won't have to recuse. No, everybody was here next week.
No,
No.
Oh, wait.
Rich and Stephen were not here.
Oh, yeah, I'm recusing from the minutes, right?
Do I need to recuse from the minutes, Tom? Okay, so I'm recused for not, Rich was absent or what?
Rich was absent.
Rich didn't be called. And.
George was here for part of the meeting.
I'd
Not that
rather,
part.
Right.
we didn't have much else besides this. So I'm just voting present, okay? I'll be present. No, Mark is recused. Mark is.
From the minute. I think was Steve here? Was Steve with you?
Stephen and Rich were absent,
Yeah,
and so was Kathy.
yes, right, okay, so those we do.
Unless they listen to the tape. But Kathy has listened to the tape, but she's not here. Oh, Steve listened. to the
I
tape.
listened to the tape too.
Yeah, so you can.
We can vote on minutes?
Yeah, if you listen to the tape. you vote.
I read the minute.
Except George will not vote, and that's because it's valid.
Right,
Okay.
Okay.
So roll call on the minutes.
yeah, we don't know.
We just do all in favor, so.
Yeah, all-
Then I.
That's all.
Okay. We have a resolution that we need approval for our pay for bed one.
The extension of time?
This was the
Yes.
extension, wasn't it?
Yeah, just the extension. Yeah.
1 year.
So we need a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Jacobs,
Aye.
Committeeman Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Leonard,
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mr. DeJonine,
Aye.
Mr. Walter,
Aye.
Mr. First,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
but because you did the minutes.
Yeah, if you listen to the tape.
I read the
I
transcript.
read the resolution, yeah.
Oh, don't-
Skip Mr. First
skip Mr. Bird.
and Chairwoman, Guttoff.
Aye.
The other resolution I'm still working on, so we're not doing that tonight.
We have a resolution as well for Crossroads.
No, that's the one I'm working on still.
Oh,
We're not
you're
doing
working-
that tonight. Right.
Okay, I have it listed on the agenda.
Yes, that was my mistake, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, I guess we're ready to go on to advance.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, board professionals, and the public at large. My name is John Inglesino. Good to be back with you. I'm a partner in the firm of Inglesino Taylor located in Parsippany. And I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Bedminster 2 Funding LLC, which is an affiliate of the Advanced Group, which, as you know, is located here in Bedminster. The property which is the subject of this application is Lot 12 and Block 33 on the tax map of Bedminster, New Jersey, and also known as 1400 through 1430 Route 206. We opened this application on October 12th, and by way of brief summary, the property is zoned in the ORV zoning district. The applicant is seeking preliminary and final site plan approval with waivers and variance relief for one office building of approximately 30,656 square feet, and is also seeking preliminary and major site plan approval for 4 retail professional office buildings of approximately 18,280 square feet. At the last meeting, you heard extensive testimony and questioning from the applicant's engineer, Bob Michello. Mr. Michello answered all questions from the board professionals, and the public. Tonight, we're attempting to conclude the application if we can. We have 2 witnesses. Nancy Doherty of Studio 1200 will testify as the project applicant, and John McDonough will provide planning testimony. So, Madam Chair, without further ado, I'd like to call Ms. Doherty as our first witness with regard to architecture.
Ms. Doherty, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And please state your name and address and spell your last name.
Sure. Name is Nancy Doherty. Last name is Dougherty. Address is 11 Burr Road in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Ms. Doherty, if you could provide the board with your educational and professional background and any licenses that you possess.
Sure. I have an undergraduate degree from Barnard College in architecture, a master's from Columbia University in architecture. I have been licensed since 1995. I'm principal at Studio 1200 located in Short Hills, and am licensed in, I think, 8 states at the moment, but certainly New Jersey is the first one.
And you've testified before planning boards and zoning boards and
Yes.
land use boards. And
Yes,
you've been
I-
accepted as an expert witness in your area of architecture.
Yes, I have.
Madam
The
Chair,
board will accept her qualifications as a registered architect, and please go ahead.
great, thank you. So, Ms. Doherty, if you would kindly share with the board the architectural aspects of the project.
Sure.
I just was waiting. So you need me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Go right ahead.
Great, thank you.
I think we left off, I think we're at 8:10.
Yes, we left off at A9. That was our last one.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Look forward to sharing the architectural aspects of this project with you. I know there was a lot of testimony about the site, so I'm going to go sort of briefly into that just as a starting point. So our exhibit 1, which will be exhibit A10, is just showing the existing site conditions. I think, as everybody knows, the site is a major gateway to the township. It's an important economic node and the face of Bedminster for northbound travelers on 206. When we worked on the design, as was mentioned, you're going to see 5 buildings tonight, 4 smaller retail office business use buildings and 1 2-story professional office building. The design that we worked on respects the scale and the character of the Bedminster Historic Village District. It's a compatible backdrop to the village area. It celebrates the town and country character of Bedminster and its agrarian and equestrian history. We were able to meet the design criteria of the ordinance sections 13-407, 1 through 4 in particular, that talk about the design aspects. We did present the design to the HPC on September 20th, and we were given approval to present to this board. The HPC gave us some very constructive feedback, which we've incorporated into the exhibits you're going to see tonight. Those exhibits reflect the changes that they requested, which include for buildings, and I'll go through this, but buildings 3 and 4, they asked us to make them look like siblings, not twins. So you're gonna see that. They asked us to modify the west elevation of the two-story office building, proposed office building, so that it was asymmetrical. Originally, we had a symmetrical facade. We've done that, so you'll see that. They asked us to eliminate the louvers and uplighting at the stone piers on the proposed two-story office building. And we've also done that. They felt like they were too industrial looking. We also had the benefit of getting feedback from the hearing on October 12th. And there was a request to, I think, dramatically reduce the lighting. So we've done that, and I'll go through that with you as we look at the individual buildings. There was also a request to eliminate the window wells for buildings 3 and 4 because they needed a variance. So those window wells are gone. So we don't need that variance. I think there was a question about I know there was a question about paving at the two-story office building. So we're going to address that. And then also just to add, I know there was a question about trash. And so for the 4 office/retail buildings, there will be trash rooms provided if those buildings have food service or restaurant tenants. So sort of going through, again, these are the existing, everybody knows the existing site quite well. The primary entrance is on, is on coming in from, sorry, let me find my cursor. Here we go. So coming in from 206, everybody's familiar with that. We have the original Forbes building seen obliquely here on the site that's visible from 206 that has a combination of brick and siding with columns and the
Can you
widow's
make
wall.
each of those, when you address them, can you make it? the
Yes,
full-
absolutely.
So that, yeah.
Bless you.
Here we go.
Sure.
Sorry. Oh, sneak preview.
Let's go right to that.
Should we go right to that?
Thank you.
Yeah, we know what to say.
Yeah, okay, so let's go to that. Here we go. Okay, so we'll go right to this. So starting on, just for reference here.
Just minimize it,
Oh,
just so we can see everything.
that's
There we go.
fantastic, thank you. So 206 here is running on the sort of bottom of the screen. As you come onto the site, we have what we're calling buildings 3 and 4 that flank the entrance. There's an existing monument sign there that Gladstone testified will remain at its current size, but be reclad. As you come onto the site, then once you pass in between buildings 3 and 4, on the east side of the site, there's what we're calling retail commercial buildings 1 and 2. Those buildings are, symmetrical, and there's a generous courtyard in between those 2 buildings. As you turn and run north on the site, you can see the Forbes building in this rendering, and then sort of nestled into the northwest corner of the site is the 2-story professional office building that has an L-shaped configuration. And then finally, in the northeast segment of the site, you have the 2 brick 2-story office buildings. So that gives you the general layout of what we have. Again, we worked very carefully to follow the design guidelines for the ORV Office Research Village Zone, as well as the HPC criteria. You will see that we have a combination of natural materials, sloping roofs, subtle lighting strategies that have been reduced even further, and then very controlled and integrated signage. There were also visual ties that link these new buildings to each other and to the existing buildings. The 4 1.5-story buildings, it's a total of approximately 18,000 square feet. I'll give you the square footages of each one as we get a little zoom in a bit. And the 2-story office building has approximately 30,596 square feet. To go. So we're gonna. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Maybe not. Sorry. Kate. Can you just, sorry. My apologies. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so we've now come down a little bit and you can see buildings 3 and 4 a little bit sort of zoomed in a bit. Each of the buildings has accommodates up to 2 tenants. So you can see as you look at these buildings on the left, there's sort of 2 sets of storefronts. We will zoom in a bit further, but I just want to point out a few things. So they have sloped roofs. You can see, particularly if you look at this building number 4, there is a section at the top of those sloped roofs where all of the HVAC equipment will go. So none of it will be visible from sort of eye level or sidewalk level. So that's what that slot is at the top of the buildings. Each one of the buildings has a terrace, a patio space on the right-hand side facing south, which you can see here, which had been described in the site plan. And they also each have roof terraces, again, facing south. So that's the general layout of these buildings. As we zoom in here, I'm going to get in a little bit closer for you. So you can see, so now this is buildings 1 and 2, excuse me, 3 and 4. So on the left-hand side, you see building 3, and on the right-hand side, you see building 4. The front ends of these buildings on the west and east elevations, they are stone facades, so they have gable ends with coping, generous coping that lines the top of those ends. In between the gable ends, there's a combination of the materials being used are whitewash brick, and up above that we have vertical siding. There are a combination.
Can you zoom in on that so we can see that?
Yeah.
Even closer?
Yep. Maybe not that close.
Move the bar right down. Yeah, well, there's some PDF programs don't do that. It's useless. So much.
Apologize, it's you're not cooperating. So that is building number 3. If we scroll over to the other side, you can see building number 4 there. That's probably the best view. So gable end, as you can see, it has the potential for 2 tenants in that building. So there's a sign, 2 signs facing 206. And there's 2 signs facing the parking lot on the other side. On the right-hand side, you see where the sort of potential roof terrace is, and you can see the vertical siding that pops up on the 2nd floor. On this elevation, we have sort of a circular window in the potential mezzanine level with standing seam overhangs with brackets. On the sister building, if you will, we have a different kind of window treatment up on the 2nd in the mezzanine level at the request of the HBC. So that's the sort of overall description of these buildings. They are 35 feet to the above average grade to the height of the topmost portion of the buildings is 35 feet. The footprint of each one of these buildings is approximately 3,636 square feet. In terms of the signage, I mentioned they have signs facing 206 and also facing the parking lot. All of the signage is conforming in terms of its size. Each one of these signs is 18 inches by 96 inches. The lighting, we have barn style gooseneck lights that are on the ends of the buildings and also in between some of the column bays. We did reduce the lighting on these 2 buildings. So on the south facades on each building, we originally had 5 gooseneck lights. We've reduced it down to 2. So we've got a total reduction in lights for the building. We reduced it by 6 exterior fixtures.
As a question,
Yes.
so the historic commission made recommendations that those 2 buildings not be identical. And you said you made some changes so that
Yes.
they weren't. What changes other than the shape of the windows?
Though that was the request in the discussion with the HBC, was really the focus on the windows. That was their request to us.
I think that was a suggestion, you know,
Uh-huh.
like change one of those
Yes.
windows, but you know, it would. You could, if you chose to make more changes to
Right.
make them, you
Yeah,
know, a little different, I think that would be fine too, but that was one of the suggestions.
yes, right. So,
And just, they still look identical to me, other than the fact that the windows are different shape.
right. And now what I will say, which is hard to appreciate from this perspective, when you drive in between them, they look quite different, which is, you can see in the elevation. So they're sort of, as you experience them, as you drive by them, they will feel very different because you never see them sort of their same facades facing each other.
Would you be able to see them from the west side? Will they look different? Where they look, you know, if you're, obviously 206 is on the west side, west
Yes.
elevation.
Right.
So will they look different if you're driving by? Can you tell the difference between the two buildings? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think you can tell the difference between the buildings. And you know, the one on the right has, we have standing seam overhangs with brackets. The one on the left doesn't have those overhangs.
Can you point those out to me?
Yes, of course. And so on the right hand, on building number 4, you can see here. And
Oh, the overhangs.
yep, you want me to zoom in there a bit?
You call them overhangs, awnings, sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought you were talking about something on the video.
there you go.
Yeah, like the one has a little.
Those are permanent awnings.
So you can call those permanent awnings. They have a standing seam metal roof on them. They have metal brackets.
More
and then-
permanent, yeah.
And then in between them, there are the sort of barn style lights that are on either side of them.
And a rose window in this one, and the other one's got a squarish window.
The other one has 2
Yeah.
smaller windows, 2 sort of rectangular windows. And the other one does not have these overhangs. So if we go over, let me go over to the other one for you.
And Nancy, question for you. On the second story windows, I guess because these buildings, all 4 of these buildings, including
Uh-huh.
these 2, have like an equipment chase.
Yes,
Yeah, so it's a 1-story building and then you have a narrow area while the equipment is inside, right?
yes,
And
that's
so
correct.
all these second floor windows that are in the, you know, the shed dormers on either side, are they enclosed spaces or are they available? I mean, do people inside the spaces have access to that? Is there a high ceiling inside?
So the idea is there's a high ceiling inside and there would be a mezzanine that would get you out to these roof terraces,
Right.
but there's not second floors in these buildings. So
Right,
the
no.
idea is that they have sort of open ceilings, plenty of light and air that are coming in
Those
through
are-
those windows.
Clear story windows, for
Yes.
lack of better.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, okay.
Yep.
Want to make sure.
Yeah, kind of faking you out.
What's
It's faking you out and me.
So, other questions on these buildings?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
I guess it's a brick facade with those peaks in the front, the kind of chimney fireplace look,
These are stone, so these
There's
would
a
be,
stone
those are
there.
field stone.
field stone. Oh,
Uh-huh. So I did mention brick, there is some brick on some of these buildings in between the field stone, but the end walls and, you know, sort of. Harkening back to some of the very old buildings in the town in the area with those end field stone walls.
that particular design, does it have a name where you have this peak and then at the very top you have a little chimney? There, is that a specific?
I mean, they're
Architecture.
gable ends to the building.
Because okay. They just don't, I'm not sure about it. It's okay.
Oh, I mean, there is definitely historic precedent for that.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, for sure.
So that looks kind of like a blue, you know, like a very pale stone on those gable ends.
And
And
you know,
that's
the rendering.
on your exterior material schedule,
Yes.
that's the material that's just described as stone, that's not the cast stone. That's
No,
just-
that's the stone. So this
Right.
is actual stone.
And then the brick is,
So you can't see the
the
brick.
white brick
here.
is otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, which is not on this, what you're seeing right here doesn't have that, because this has board work sort of on the lower level where the columns are, and then it has vertical siding on the mezzanine level in this view that you're seeing. I will put you on the other buildings, there's white brick whitewash brick that's on the first level.
Did the historic committee make a recommendation on
other than that window, a different material of stone, but a different color on the other building? Or do you think that would be too much of a?
I mean,
I think what happened is that night, we really didn't talk about materials. We gave you a conditional approval, but there really wasn't any discussion regarding the materials itself.
Are those stone the same stone on each building?
To be finalized.
yes,
It is the same stone.
it
on each
is the
building.
same stone.
Okay.
So we're using, the palette of materials for the site is a combination of this stone. You will see the white brick that's on buildings 1 and 2, the vertical siding, and then when we get to the 2-story office building, stucco. The stucco has been incorporated, and also on the back of buildings 1 and 2. So there's really sort of a palette of 4 materials.
Can I ask a question? But the landscaping that you're showing us in these diagrams, are those the suggested landscaping that you're going to plant?
So the specifics of the landscaping. I mean,
Will be discussed later.
well, the landscaping has already been presented, and the locations of the plants represent sort of the quantity of the plants.
Okay,
There's some artistic license with the renderer,
okay.
but the trees are shown in the correct locations, et cetera.
Any questions?
Okay,
Before you completely give up on those window wells, what was the purpose of those? Just to provide light in that storage area?
yes.
And that encroached on the setbacks by what?
8 inches?
2 or 3 feet?
No, it was 8 inches. It was my recollection.
Pretty small amount, yeah.
But they're getting rid of the variance.
It created a variance.
They're getting rid of the
Any
variance.
variance to get rid of it was a good thing, yeah.
Okay.
And Nancy, the final materials go back to HPC in terms of the actual, all
Sure.
right, so Kathy, you're gonna see them one last time, correct?
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Anyone else on board have any questions? The architect?
Oh, you haven't got to it. I probably will have questions when we get to the larger. office
Yes.
building.
Yeah, she's gonna show us. the other
Yeah,
one.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
Ready to
Nancy,
go?
are
Keep
the plans that we were submitted to us? Are they reflective of these recent changes that perhaps you made? Are they reflected in these
No.
plans?
Not the original, these are new exhibits.
Okay, so we don't have that. But you,
No,
okay,
That's right.
all right.
She explained.
It came out today.
You missed her a second.
the recycling's over there. Rick.
Okay.
Nice show,
Most of
nice
it
show
is the
though.
same. The size of the buildings didn't change anything but the size of the buildings, et cetera. Okay, here we go. So now we're looking at buildings 1 and 2. So as I said, they are symmetrical. So you are seeing building 1 on the left and building 2 on the right. Let me just get you to the material here.
These are the ones that were sent out.
Okay, here we go. So buildings 1 and 2. On the left,
They don't want to, they want to stay here.
Yeah.
I don't
We've
know.
all been there.
Every day.
How about like buildings?
Yeah. I don't know.
Good.
Okay. They're gonna pull them up on the other screen in a moment, but let's keep going here. So buildings 1 and 2, they are symmetrical on the left-hand side. So the first story of the building on the left, starting on the left, is white brick, and above that is vertical siding. These buildings have the potential for 4 tenants. So you can see there's signage for 4 individual tenants along here. The top of these buildings is at 35 feet, so it complies with the ordinance. These buildings, each building is approximately 5,504 square feet. We have this space for outdoor seating in between the buildings. There is signage, above each potential tenant. Those signs are each 12 square feet. The storefronts will be in a bronze finish. We have a standing seam roof that is relates to the standing seam roof on buildings 3 and 4. So that will be used again for some of the overhangs. There are brackets that support some of those overhangs, and we have clear story windows in there again to add, bring light into the buildings, and all of the mechanical equipment will be concealed inside those areas on the roof of the building.
So just to clarify, at 35 feet high, these are still single story spaces?
Yes, they are. So there'll be high ceilings, 1.5 story possibility just to raise the ceilings, but there's no second floors in these buildings.
There mezzanines on these buildings too, or no?
Same as those other buildings.
We're not planning for mezzanines at the moment. There might be mezzanines, but there's no outdoor terrace for
Okay.
these buildings.
The mezzanines on 3 and 4, were they included in the FAR calculations that we saw last week?
I don't think the mezzanines get included in the FAR.
They don't. Okay,
Right. And again, they're just access to get you out to the roof terrace.
okay.
Oh, all right, Matt, maybe you're gonna have better success.
Now, those buildings are twins, they're not siblings, right?
Those are, they're, yes, they're
They're
twins.
twins.
They're mirrored twins.
All right.
Right. And I don't think I think the discussion at the HPC was that as
Identical.
mirrored twins, that
was all right.
was that strategy.
I think they call them paternal.
Yeah.
They're not
Anyway.
identical, yeah.
One has a mole in its cheek.
So any specific questions about these, other questions about these buildings? You can see now on the left-hand side, there's brick sort of at the first floor with a vertical siding above that. And you can see each of the signs. We did in the middle 2 sign locations. We originally had uplighting for the sign lights. There was a comment, I think, from the engineer about that. We've changed those so they're down lights. So we've eliminated any uplighting on these buildings.
So were there any changes made in this rendering than what?
No.
So you didn't make any of the changes?
Our takeaway from the HPC meeting was that it wasn't these buildings. You'll see when we get to the 2-story office
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah.
Right, we made some pretty significant changes
Thank
based
you.
on the HPC conversation. Right, so these are exactly what you've already seen in your packet. Are there other questions about these buildings? No, okay. So. Yep, thank you. So the last building we're going to look at is the 2-story professional office building that, as I said, is sort of nestled into the northwest corner of the site. So for this building, we wanted it to complement the other buildings on the campus. We also wanted to use a similar palette of materials. We did, as I said, got feedback from the HPC, so we did address those comments in some depth. So starting at the front of the building, there's 2 stone piers. Again, that's the same stone that we're using on the gable ends and also at the base in buildings 1 and 2. As you can see in this rendering, we have a sloped standing seam roof that wraps around portions of the building with metal brackets. On the first floor, there are some overhangs. We originally had downlights in those overhangs. We got rid of all of the downlights except at the entrance doors. So that eliminated 32 lights. So those lights are all gone. In addition, we had, there are stucco piers in between the windows. We have a reveal detail there. And originally we had some lighting that was down at the base of those piers. We've relocated that lighting so it's underneath the brackets. And it's just a very fine pinpoint light that shines down on those pilasters. As you move around the building towards the west facade that faces 206, we made other changes based on the HPC recommendations, which had to do with taking out some of the grills at the stone pier, at those corner piers. And there were uplights at each one of those corners. We took all of that uplighting out, so that's a total of 6 FEX3 fixtures that were removed entirely. So the one remaining piece of lighting that there is for the sign that's on the entry canopy. There is lighting proposed right in front of that. I don't know if you can zoom in there, Matt. There we go, thank you. So the intention is that there are letters above there. Those letters conform with the sign ordinance. But the proposal is that those letters would be lighted for the signage.
And that would presumably be the name of the company.
Correct. Yeah.
Do you have a view of the west side from 206 or what it looks like?
I have the elevation of it rendered. We don't have a three-dimensional rendering of the 206 side. Actually, if we go back out, that's not true. If we go back out to the third side, the second one, we can zoom into that one and see it. So originally, there were two stone piers on sort of the northwest corner and the southwest corner of this western facade. And the feedback we had gotten from the HPC was that it would be better to create some asymmetry in that facade and also to consider wrapping that standing seam metal roof around that northwest corner. So that's what we did. We've now, the signage for the second sign for the building is facing 206. At the sort of southwest corner of the building. And then as we go around towards the northern corner of the site, the standing seam roof wraps around there.
If that's a standard kind of commercial flat roof there, there's no terrace there, the flat roof we're looking at.
That's correct. And thank you for bringing that up. The gable that you see at the entry is for mechanical equipment, so there's no habitable space up on that roof.
And what is the structure that structure on the top? I guess you're calling it a gable. What is it made of? Is it steel? Is it, what is it?
It would be a steel structure, and then it has sort of fins in between it, but it's open to the air. In a bronze finish to match the windows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
See, you also removed the amphitheater.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yes, please. And it's Z2.
They're very interesting. I don't think so.
It's very good. Zoom in on that version of the model. Yep. Okay, so just before we go to the back of the building, I also want to just point out, in the original submission, there were 17 bollards in front of the two-story office building, all of them were lighted. So you can see now it's been revised. It's a little hard to see here, but if we zoom in a little further, the F designation is the lighted bollard. So there's 4 lighted bollards. The rest of them are just bollards for security and cars, but they're not lighted. So we went from 17 to 4. Thank you. So if we go to the back of the building now.
They're otherwise identical, except for the fact that they're not lit.
Correct. They're the same. They have the same kind of sleeve on them. So a bronze kind of sleeve on them, but they're not, they have no light coming out of them. So at the back of the building, I know there was questions about what was happening back there. So we did get rid of the amphitheater. So if you see now, if we zoom in a little bit further.
Is that a design consideration or some based on feedback somewhere?
In terms of getting rid of the amphitheater?
Yeah.
I think it was really to simplify the design.
Your choice, not necessarily as a reaction to HPC or us.
No. It was also, I know there was a question about what the materials were. So the paving material at the back will be bluestone pavers. And then you can see there's a curved seat wall, which will still be there. That was part of the original commission. And then there's To the right, there's 6 where you see that curve. There are 6 light bollards there. Those light bollards have a much lower light level than the ones in the front of the building. So there's 6 of those just to create some sort of atmosphere in the back of the building. And then there's a combination of fencing to sort of enclose some of this back portion of the landscape area.
Any thought to what the uses of those outdoor spaces are, other than maybe, dining associated with a food service
I
of some
think that-
kind?
I think so. If you, Matt, if you just zoom out a bit, in the back of the building, the intention is that there would be sort of an open town hall space on the sort of left-hand side or the western side of the first floor. That's where the cafe is. So that it's planned to be cafe space. And then it would have doors that open up out to the patio. There's a covered patio space that's shown, so an area with a covering, and then the rest of it would be open. So the intention is it's for outdoor.
So dining, convocation, for lack of a better word. Any gaming or things like that will be permanent or year round?
No,
Okay,
no, I think,
yeah, there you go.
Gaming? Betting?
Don't worry.
That's
It is.
Sure.
All right, board, anybody else from the board?
Challenge, just travel anytime.
I think we can open it up to the public. This is.
For questions of this witness,
Excuse me?
for questions of this
Yes.
witness.
Yes, if you have any questions.
Only
for
questions.
This architect.
Any, just a question, because personally, I think the buildings in the rear are hideous. Any plan to do anything about what they look like?
Existing. Original.
Yeah, not part of the application.
right.
Not part of the application. All right,
I do have one more question.
although they are well leased.
Do you have an architectural of, that mezzanine and walk up to, do you have anything drawn for that?
We do not have the mezzanines drawn at the moment. I think it's really contingent on what kind of tenant goes in there. I know there was testimony that they could be either office or, retail tenants going in those buildings.
I do know that HPC was very concerned with the streetscape along 206. All right, do you have a rendering of the streetscape of 206?
So if we go back to the original rendering, the landscaping and everything is shown in that rendering.
You have bird's eyes. Do you have any, like,
I do know that they had
Ground level views?
recommendations of, some wood, some bushes and
Right.
then some stone and some bush, so that it wasn't one long hedgerow.
Right, and it's definitely been enhanced since, certainly since we showed it to you at the HPC. And the site plan has continued to evolve, so there is more landscaping being proposed along there. And we definitely, when we come back to the HPC, we'll be able to show that to you.
Okay.
Okay, anyone from the public have any questions for the architect? Yep.
but again, there's only bird's eyes of that perspective, nothing from the ground level.
Of the mezzanine, which one are you?
No, of that 206 point of
We
view.
have an elevation of the two-story office building, but not the whole.
Not the whole
site.
complex.
I
Okay.
do know that that's what HBC is
Right.
very concerned about.
If we can go back to that, so the plantings that are currently there,
Yes,
those. Is that mimicking the existing plantings, that straight line?
yes,
So. HBC may make a recommendation to change that, but to some extent, I think, from my perspective,
we need to.
I think
that's what we're used to.
Didn't they move that hedgerow closer to the road?
Yeah, the hedgerow would move forward.
Yeah.
But HBC may say they want to see some curves, they want to see some breaks, but to some extent, I mean, I think that's almost a landmark feature of the property. So I understand HPC may have some opinions about those bushes. I personally think that if you're maintaining that line that's currently there, I wouldn't make that change, but.
That's me.
I'm only carrying what the committee, was
But they
discussing.
already meet with HPC, so those comments.
But that wasn't a,
Delivered,
okay,
so we get to look at it different.
yes.
Even they have to still go back to the HPC.
Right.
Yeah, but.
HPC just gives
HPC
recommendations.
doesn't give approval.
Yeah.
Right, HPC only gives that
And we give the
recommendation.
nods.
They're not.
But if it's kind
So-
of conditional review and come back and show them again, follow up with what.
Well, they can, right, and I think that's the recommendation, that they'll go back, they'll show finishings, they'll show materials.
Colors,
Right,
right,
color.
right. Yep.
Anybody online?
We do have some new people online. I'm not sure if they're with the applicant or if they're anyone
Okay.
who's interested,
Okay.
but you can raise your hand. There's a button, let's see. At the bottom of the Zoom screen, if you click on that, so let us know and then I can unmute you. There's,
Reactions, right?
or if there's anyone in the public, but no one has come up.
Of the architect.
This is a,
Only of the architect.
Not sure if she's, if that's what she's talking about.
I didn't hear what the question was.
I just wasn't sure.
Sarah, if you can come up.
Question. And Madam Chair, this would be questions of the architect with
That's
regard to
correct.
the testimony that was given tonight, right?
Correct.
And I'm not sure who's the right, which is the right.
we'll
side
ask the
of
question and
presentation.
we'll let you know.
Okay, so
Please state your name.
about
Please state your name.
the-
Please state your name.
Sarah Nathan.
Sarah, please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
I live on Somerville Road, the other side of it, so my concern is. Who's that one? What's the, what's happening to buffer? Is there's gonna be a catch basement, concerned about runoff from the it proposed, so I'm not sure if that's for the architect.
Yeah, that was last week or month, and
Right, but I thought there was still some question about that, is what I had heard, that there was.
no, not really. Just focus on what she just talked about is what you can ask her about. That means staying within the scope of her direct testimony. This witness, Ms. Doherty.
Okay. So then this would not be the proper time.
Doesn't
You have
sound like
any
it.
question for the architect? Lisa?
About the building.
Now, again, my question was, I wasn't sure if she was doing the entire scope of the project or was
No, that
just
was the
with her
engineer.
testimony.
That was last week. The
Okay.
engineer testified. Right now is the
Basically,
architect.
the buildings, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? On the 12th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out of town, so I was unable to. So, okay, thank you.
Sorry. Anyone else? A question for the architect? Did you find anything, Janine, online? No?
Online, no one has raised their hand
Okay.
for me to unmute them.
Okay. All right, looks like we.
Wait,
close.
no, Ms. Rekovic has is raising her hand.
Oh, well, come up front. Come up
Come
front.
up.
Come up front, please.
No. Come on down.
State your name again.
Kelly Rockovic. Hi.
You're still under oath. That's okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. When you were showing like the zoomed out view of the project. I was just wondering from your standpoint, the buildings that I believe there are buildings 3 and 4 that would be closest to the backyards of our residents on 121 Somerville Road. I was just wondering if you're gonna explain more of those buildings and like the parking lots and what will be built around that would be backing near the backyards of our property.
Actually, 1 and 2, I think you're
Yeah.
talking about.
1 and 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm
Do
mixing
you have
up.
elevations of the rear of 1 and 2 perhaps?
We do.
Yeah, I was just curious, like what 1 and 2 would be like and what the area around it would be like. And
So the area around it, I think it was covered in the site plan, but I can definitely show you. it's still in-
yeah, I think that's what we were just wondering is as residents, what those buildings closest to us would be like.
So, if you look at the elevation, that says the number 2 in front of it, that's, oh, sorry, I forgot.
Okay.
So if you look at this elevation, that shows what the back of buildings 1 and 2 look like. as I testified before, they originally had 9 lights on each of them, so we've reduced the lighting dramatically on the backs of those. They're 1-story buildings with gables, and so that's what they look like. They're a combination of stucco with vertical siding above that and clear story windows.
Okay, but there's not like, you know how the other ones go more like. Realistic type of, you know, this is the only right now. I'm scattered.
Share the microphone.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. I was just curious if you had any more of like those realistic type pictures of those two. And like, and if there's any way to zoom in on what like the buildings and the parking lot around it looks like, or is that the only image at this point?
That's the image we have.
Okay. And then behind them, would there be the parking lot would go behind it or just in front of the buildings?
Yeah, I think that part of the site plan was testified to.
Okay, so this is more the building itself and not the parking lots. Okay, thank you very much.
So below the gable is just the plain stucco,
Correct.
and then above the gable is hardy board, vertical board and batten, or just like reveals between the panels.
It's intended to be vertical siding, so like a hardy vertical siding with reveals.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, we'll close it to the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at this time, I'd like to call up Mr. John McDonough, who is our planner.
Mr. McDonough, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And please state your name and address and spell your last name.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John McDonough. That's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH.
Thank you, John.
Okay,
Addresses.
name, rank, and serial number.
Yeah.
Address too?
Address, yeah.
Business address, 101 Gibraltar Drive over in that way, Parsippany, New Jersey.
Describe to the board, if you would, your educational background, professional experience. and any
You may
license.
do this, but the board has recognized and accepted John McDonough's qualifications in the past, so we will continue to do so.
It's good to be back. My license is current and in good standing.
Thank you, John.
So please describe the variances, the waivers and the proofs.
Sure thing. I had some visuals, but I'm going to skip right over them. I think in the interest of efficiency, I can always come back if the board wants to see or hear anything else, but you have a good body of evidence before you to form a foundation for the conclusions that I'm about to give you with respect to a planning standpoint. You have good solid testimony from our engineer at the first hearing, good detailed testimony as to the technical aspects of the relief that the applicant is seeking and really the technical justifications. I'm going to take it back to the statute. In particular, look at the flexible C balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole would substantially outweigh the detriments. And as with all applications, we always consider the pros on the one side, we consider the cons on the other. I think the positives here are numerous, and I'll recite them for the board. First and foremost, we're going to take a project that is going to deliver permitted uses, which explicitly implies that it serves the public welfare, including, as you heard, a new corporate headquarters as an anchor to the other improvements of this prominent and important location in your community, this business location in your community. The project will enhance an established business center with added value and quality. The project will bring people and a consumer population to the village center to support local businesses. It'll have a nice ripple effect, if you will. The project, as you've just seen, will have attractive architecture that has paid attention to the character of the area, has passed muster with the Historic Commission, and it will create a visually pleasing environment with respect to landscaping and the overall look and feel of the development. This project is going to be lush with plantings. We spent a lot of time at the last hearing talking about that buffer between the residential uses and the non-residential use here, the berm system, keeping the plantings that are there now along the woods edge and supplementing with evergreens. So we will have 4 seasons of screening and seasonal interest. The project is going to also promote core planning goals for efficient use of land and variety of land uses in appropriate locations. All of these come back to the land use law, especially purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare, purpose G, to provide for a variety of uses in appropriate locations, purpose I, the promotion of a desirable visual environment, and purpose M, which is the efficient use of land. We are taking this established center, we are going to enhance it with new buildings, new landscaping, and new improvements on the site. Those are all the positives which have extreme weight. On the negative side, we look at potential impacts, and based on all of the testimony on the record as a predicate to my conclusion, that all relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public or without substantial impairment to your zone plan. There's some setback relief here, which is really on the verge of de minimis. It's only a couple of feet. It's mitigated by landscaping. And the intent of those regulations are to provide for adequate light and air and open space, which is clearly met here. The provided buffer is going to be adequate to provide a nice soft edge around the development, as you've seen and as you've heard, and screen those neighboring properties. So this is going to be a better integration of land with the neighborhood than that which presently exists. The parking and the loading supply, which do require relief, will meet the actual demand. Additional supply here would be wasteful, is unnecessary, would create pavement and impervious coverage that is simply not needed. There's relief here related to the sign package as well. As you've seen and as you've heard, the sign package is tasteful. It's well integrated into the overall design. It's not excessive. It's not going to be offensive in the context of the site. Those are the proofs that would go towards the variance relief that the applicant is seeking, and I can certainly go through the individual relief one by one for the board. We have a bundle of design exceptions as well, which are subject to a much more relaxed standard of proof than variances. We don't have to apply the balancing. We just simply have to show or demonstrate a sense of reasonableness and impracticability. On the reasonableness side, the overall design meets acceptable site planning principles and guidelines. All design relief is reasonable and appropriate, as has been addressed in detail by detailed design and expert testimony. And all design relief is necessary to effectuate this overall good project. In terms of impracticability, strict or literal enforcement of the ordinance in this sense would be impracticable and really serve no practical planning purpose. The bundle of relief on the seaside, we've got front setback for the principal building at 48.1, where 50 feet would be the minimum required, is a de minimis deviation, less than 2 feet. Likewise, the side setback, the principal building at 97.2 versus 50 feet, is also a de minimis deviation, less than 3 feet. You heard through Rob's testimony about the setback or the separation between the buildings number 2 and number 4, 41.7 feet, where 50 feet would be the minimum required, is going to promote effective connectivity on a pedestrian scale between those two buildings. The rear setback for the accessory building at 51.4 versus 75 feet is going to be mitigated by a refuse enclosure and plantings. The planted buffer along the residential area, spent a lot of time talking about this last time, 42 feet, where 100 feet would be the minimum required. The proposal is going to include that berm and heavy landscaping to justify that relief. Parking supply, 348.
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
I know you're on a roll, but
no problem.
So that buffer is significant to me. And we talked a little bit last week about how the areas where perhaps it's most intrusive are on properties currently owned by the applicant. I don't know, and we don't know that those properties that are currently owned by the applicant will continue to be owned by the applicant. So, you know, I get the de minimis argument up to this point, because to go from 100 feet to 42 feet, as opposed to 8 inches for window wells, is significant to me. So can you spend a little time describing how you think that going from 100 to 42 is not significant.
And I would,
how it may be mitigated in some way that I'm not seeing.
I'm flipping to sheet 12 of the applicant's plans. And actually perhaps more.
Civil plans?
Of this, yes, the civil site plan.
Yeah.
The Gladstone plan, sheet 12 and 13 show the significant landscaping that is going to be proposed in that buffer area. And the key point here, and I don't know if the board needs to qualify me, but I am a landscape architect as well, licensed, current, good standing. I did not do the design, but I reviewed the design. We've got multiple layers of landscaping happening here. This is not a single row of evergreens, but this is a triple row of evergreens, as you can see. So if one of these plants gets hit by a bug, obviously the applicant will replace it. But the point is, there's going to be other trees, other layers there to maintain that clear row of separation and screening. As a landscape architect, to establish this effective screening, a solid row of evergreens, I need 15 feet. That's the general rule of thumb. Here we have quadruple that with being close to 45 feet. So again, we can achieve that triple layer effect. And I think
the 42 is only after the bank parking goes in. Is that the point? So until the bank parking goes in, it's actually.
The answer is yes.
It's actually 52 feet
yes,
or so.
or actually more. Yes.
So, all right, so your argument is that this triple row of trees and plantings is providing, in addition to the physical dimensional buffer, a physical buffer between those spaces.
Exactly. The composition of plantings here, the heavy landscaping.
Mix of evergreens and deciduous trees.
There'll be visual interest here and there will be effective screening here. That's the intent.
Now, we received a letter. I don't know if everybody knows about this, a couple hours before we got in here, that you're going to add some additional landscaping between the buildings and the homes that aren't owned by the applicant, correct?
Well,
is it worthwhile just reading that off? Because I don't know if everybody
I did not have time to read it.
is aware of that, but it's number 2 of the letter that was sent to us from Gladstone with additional landscaping to be added.
We can, and at the conclusion of Mr. McDonough's
can do that?
testimony, I'm happy to read this into the
Okay.
record because the applicant will agree to
All
it.
right, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right, you didn't get onto parking yet, but I'll come back to you after you outline your parking argument.
I was actually just getting to parking, but we were jumping from the buffer to, and I only have a couple more to hit here. The parking supply, the relief the applicant is seeking is 348, where 528 would be the minimum that's required under the ordinance. Again, I think we've got good backdrop here that this is a campus, there's a sharing of spaces here, and that the supply will meet the actual demand. Likewise, the loading supply of 1 where 5 would be the minimum required. You have good expert testimony in that regard as well, that this is going to be relatively short duration. The supply will meet the actual demand. And then finally, there's a package of signage relief related to the directional signs. 4 square feet where 2 square feet would be the maximum allowed is basically a continuation of what is already there. And then finally, the sign quantity to have 2 on the building where 1 would be the maximum allowed. Again, you saw the visuals in that regard for clear and safe identification from multiple vantage points. I'll hit very quickly the design exceptions.
Before we do that, we don't need the variance requested from section 407.5 regarding the minimal principal building front yard setback of 48.1 where 58 is required. We're going to eliminate that variance.
The very first one that I hit is off the table. Okay, gotcha.
That was for the buildings 3 and 4, right?
Yes.
Right, so.
That's for the window wells.
Right.
Absolutely.
Lastly, with respect to the design exceptions, they're relatively minor. We're looking at lighting levels related to the max, the min, and the average lighting levels. I think you've got good testimony here as well that the applicant has struck an effective balance of safely lighting the site without creating objectionable glare or spillover beyond the property lines. Relief related to the site lighting for uplighting, linear lighting, which would provide an aesthetic benefit and add to the quality of the illumination on the site. The number of signs per use, I think we have the same rationale as the C relief above, We've got 3 and 4, internal and external I have here in my notes. There's just again, additional signage to provide for clear and safe identification and wayfinding on the site. The resource conservation area was addressed by.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Regarding the number of signs per use, I think it was buildings 3 and 4 that had signs on both sides of the building, both on the 206 side as well as the interior.
That's what I have here, 3 and 4, the frontages, internal and.
Any attenuation of that signage work? I know you've changed some of the signage. I think as for the main office building, there were 2 signs on the south facing side of the building. Now one is over the door on that canopy and the other one is actually west facing on the 206 side of the office building.
Right.
That's a change from last month, correct?
There's been some movement on the part of the applicant. It's supposed to be an interactive process. That's what the courts envision and glad to see that an applicant has.
But there's still 2 signs on both sides of so the tenants in those first 2 buildings are going to get twice as much signage as the people in the 3 and 4 and 1 and 2.
Again, we think it's tasteful, it's well integrated into the overall package and not excessive.
Okay.
When you pull up into the back, you can't see it otherwise. I mean, I think that was the reason in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the relief related to the resource conservation area and the tree replacement was addressed as reasonable by the engineer at the last hearing. So that's the bundle of relief that the applicant is seeking. Again, we are in the ORV zone. We had an ordinance that was recently amended to permit the uses that the applicant is proposing here, including retail restaurants along with office. All in all, this is a really good application from a practical standpoint, taking what's there, making it better. It's not overdevelopment. This list of relief is relatively minor in the overall context, not asking for coverage relief here, not asking for exorbitant setback relief. Building heights or some of the, I'll say the heavier bulk controls are not being asked for here in terms of the relief. It's a good application. It's going to take a good site and make it better. It's a significant investment and improvement to a prominent site here in your community. It reflects not only on the site, but to all the passersby and to the community at large. So I think it will enhance the image and identity of your community. Most importantly, taking everything I said, the statutory criteria for all of the relief that the applicant are seeking are met here. And in that regard, I would say approval is warranted from a planning standpoint. And that's all I have on direct.
Mr. Redundant, quick question. I just want to make sure. So the relief from the 100-foot landscape buffer does not apply to residential lots 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Just want to make that clear.
That is correct.
Can we talk a little bit about parking for a second? Because I thought in listening to the testimony that Mr. Michello said there was going to be a traffic person to talk about vehicular movements and the justification perhaps for the reduction in the parking need. I'm well aware that there aren't as many people parking in office buildings these days as there were 3 years ago. I'd like to think that that's not a permanent adjustment, but we're making a leap here that's a permanent adjustment here. I think our code called for at least 3.5 or 4 per thousand, right? One for every 250.
No, yeah, I don't require, I think it's 3.
For the office, right? For those office components, and in the retail components, what's our fraction?
Depends on, usually.
But the point is that 528 is required, and we're getting to, I think, 342 or 348 now, and that's including the EV spots, right?
That's correct.
So I wanted to hear some argument from somebody. If it wasn't a traffic engineer, I wanted to hear arguments from somebody about why we think 342 is sufficient when the code calls for 528.
I think the short answer is from a planning standpoint, that would meet acceptable industry standards for a planned commercial development under ITE or ULI, the Urban Land Institute. We're looking at a overall center that's north of 100,000 square feet with the office, the new headquarters, and the retail component. A ratio of 300 spaces to 100,000 square feet is in that 3 to 4 per 1,000, which would meet, in my view, acceptable industry standards for planned commercial development.
All right, so let's talk specifically about the buildings, because I think there was some question I did watch the video.
I'm
I
sure
think
you
there was some question last week about, or last time about a parking in, with respect to buildings 1 and 2 specifically, that there didn't seem to be maybe adequate parking around those. I thought we were going to get some data about, what's the total parking allocated to those 2 buildings specifically, that might be within reasonable walking distance to the entrances to those shops. So again, we only have single row parking, and if I'm not mistaken, in front of those buildings.
That's correct. Yeah,
So-
the larger parking field that would be to the north is certainly within reasonable walking distance of both of those buildings. They're not hundreds and hundreds of feet away.
But, so was any analysis done to what the retail parking needs might be versus the office parking needs, or we're just aggregating them all?
I'm looking at it holistically as one integrated plan development.
I guess I don't really understand. Why is it that, and maybe you said it and I apologize, but why is it that we don't need the required amount under the ordinance?
Well, the ordinance requires the applicant to look at it in aggregate. You take each piece and you just total it up. We're looking at it as an integrated holistic development here and applying industry standards for plan development.
I don't understand what that means. I'm sorry.
It means that there's,
The ordinance has, we're dealing with square foot, right? There's number of square feet and there's a number of parking spaces. I mean, I don't understand how anything varies if you look at it holistically or you look at it separately, or I don't get that. Maybe you can explain it.
Correct. What I said, the ordinance standard is actually 1 per 225 for both the office and the retail. That's a relatively high number. So our ordinance would generally require higher number of spaces. I think historically that's been because if you look at a smaller building, you need more spaces. As you get bigger buildings, then the ratio kind of changes a little bit.
One of the reasons I asked the question is when I was driving by and I looked at the new AT&T site, it looked like there wasn't a single park. I didn't drive in, but from the road, it appeared that there wasn't a single parking space available. And that's why I'm asking.
Well, it's because they took 1 million square feet and squeezed it into 40,000.
And it's Thursday. If you go by tomorrow.
Well, that's right. I mean, maybe you have to have a certain number on Friday and a different number on Wednesday.
Quite literally.
So this is a Friday application.
But if you drive by now and you look at the campus as it sits today, you'll see empty parking spaces.
Yeah, plenty of them. Parking.
And if you look at the King's
if you wanted to put the
shopping center,
drone
you see empty parking spaces.
And large.
And, while we didn't change parking standards in some of the rezoning issues, certainly I think we've heard from Paul and we've heard from Frank and we've heard from board members and other applicants that building excess parking is not good. It's not good for the look of what we have and what we want in Bedminster. And I think we dealt with this, and you and I disagreed when we did Pluckman in, right? I mean, oftentimes I look at those parking issues, that's a landlord tenant issue. Right? And I personally don't want to see parking if we don't need it.
I agree. But
you're right. It is a standard. And I think we just heard from Paul that our number is skewed high.
Yeah, it is a relatively high number when you look at. And I'm not even saying that in asking the question, Larry, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with a lot of what you're saying. I just thought we were going to hear arguments from the applicant as to why. 340.
When was that number set, the ordinance parking that we have?
Probably 1988.
Right.
So
Well, before remote work or anything like that.
Right, but
No.
I'm not concerned, because we have a piece of paper that says X, that it has to be X. I'm more concerned, are there gonna be enough places to park? You know, I'm not being.
Well, and
trying to
that's what we,
Depends on
so the,
tenants too.
you've got bank parking. Which is how many units?
They do a bank.
Mr. McDonough, what you mentioned, IT data, et cetera, like that, is there IT data that's supporting a lower number?
There is, but I think the main point that I want to make for the board, if it didn't come across from me, it certainly came across from the witnesses before me. We don't need a parking variance under the full build out with the EV credits. I think that's important. Under full build out, with the bank parking and with the EV credits, this is a conforming application from a parking standpoint. It's only for the office phase one where the relief is being sought. And that's not based on my holistic look, that's based on your ordinance.
And that's only until phase two is built.
Correct.
So
It's really,
you're all right. So that's a great fact. We almost didn't get to.
Well, it was stated.
It was explained at the, well, okay. But that is the request. That is the request.
They're looking for-
And it was
they're looking
explained.
for a variance here, but by the time you do the complete build out.
I think it's better design, it's a design
Okay.
standard waiver or exception. He justified it with his testimony, but they did explain at the last meeting that this is for the first phase because the second phase involves the construction of additional parking.
So that additional parking doesn't come till later.
And it might never come.
And
but
it might
does-
never come.
But it is on a plan. It is being reviewed and they are seeking, corrected last month or last meeting, preliminary and final for phase two as well. They just need other governmental approvals for phase two to be built. Okay,
So it's a variance.
it's a
For now.
temporal,
For now.
a temporal deviation from the standards and,
Okay.
and we.
Yeah, that wasn't clear to me. Keep parking.
But the testimony makes sense too, because when you have a village center and you have multiple uses on the same lot, even without a planned commercial development, there is a whole concept in planning of shared parking, or put it better, the ability of uses to relate to one another and utilize the same parking spaces. And that makes a lot of sense in a setting with this many buildings and with this much land. So it's appropriate, but that's your call. It is.
How many square feet is the office building itself?
Which one?
The main office, or the pet shop going.
I have 15,000.
no. The new headquarters is approximately 30, a little under 31,000 square feet.
Yeah, pet shop. Pet shop.
The Pet Food International Headquarters. It's
How much?
it's a little under 31,000.
130,000 square feet?
A little under 30, a little
under 30,000.
little over 30,000 square feet, not quite 31,000.
So even at 4 per thousand, they're only gonna need 120 spots in a pre-COVID world.
Right.
Okay,
Anyone else?
can we talk about trees for a second?
Sure thing.
Board?
All right,
I'd just like to make a comment. I think the parking is dependent on the tenants, the type of tenants, the time of day. If there's, let's say there's food and restaurants there, it might be busy on a Saturday, Sunday, but the office buildings are empty, more or less. So it'll probably.
the more we talk about it, the more comfortable I'm getting, but I wanted to talk about it. All right, the other thing is trees. So I understand a lot of time and effort has been to create these retention spaces where we have a lot of grassed areas that might otherwise be used for trees. But it seems like the trade-off in the design process was to try to minimize or even reduce the impact of stormwater, et cetera, on the adjacent properties by creating these retention fields within the property. I didn't get a chance to talk to Robert, but I'm going to ask you because you're here. So that indeed seems to be the concept. I just want to make sure that, you know, if someone wanted to say, well, there looks like there's plenty of space to add more trees, but we're not adding the trees because these retention spaces have to be retained.
It's a case of form over function for sure, where the requirement under the DEP rules is for extensive stormwater controls that impedes the ability to plant fully.
Okay. That was my understanding, but I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Okay, we'll open it up to the public. If they have any questions.
And Madam Chairman, if this is the last witness, we could actually go to questions and comments so that people don't have to come up twice. Maybe John wants to read that letter. Or-
Yeah, I think-
Yeah, I don't know that it has to be read in its entirety. I mean, there are certain.
Summarize it
Right.
Yeah, and to Tim's point, I think, paragraph 2 is important for the residents on Somerville Road.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so there are certain elements here that should be read into the record, some maybe more mundane in engineering, but John, since Rob hogged the entire meeting, you want to go 3 pages? It's up to you.
Let me try to summarize,
Before he does that, real quick, I know Frank's not here, but his representative is online, I guess.
Oh, good.
Who is representing,
I don't know. I mean,
who's representing
Janine.
Frank tonight? Anyone?
They're muted, but can you, if you're here representing Bannister Associates, go to reactions and let us know. Raise your hand, then I can unmute you.
I just want to see if there's any response from our planner regarding Mr. McDonough's testimony. Bueller?
We have Frank's
I don't know that CG or Melissa is Frank's representative,
No.
Rich, I'm sorry to say. Usually it's Joanne and she's not here. Neither of those are her.
Paul can help us if you want.
I can put my planner hat on if you like.
Go for it.
Go for it, Paul. I've actually heard Mr. McDonough testify 2 or 3 times.
Too many times.
A month. And he's gone through what the criteria are for the positive and negative criteria for C variance. And I think ultimately it comes down to the board's decision relative to the flexible C2 variance where the benefits outweigh the detriments. And I think he's provided those arguments to you. Ultimately, it's your decision. He's also gone through the discussion for design waivers, which, as he said, it's a more informal level of relief or argument that needs to be made. But I think he's hit all the items that you need to hit in both cases.
Okay, thanks.
okay, you want me to go through the
Go to
conditions?
public.
No, well, no, he's gonna read.
He's gonna.
Yeah, so
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
So there was a
Too.
letter sent today, let me be clear for the record. This is from the applicant's engineer, Robert Michello of Gladstone Design, Inc. The letter is dated November 2nd of this year. And it attempts to summarize the various conditions that the applicant agreed to at the last meeting. To the extent there are any conditions not reflected in the letter, but are in the record, those would be included as well. We believe this is a comprehensive list, but I want everybody to understand that we're bound by whatever representations were made on the record as well. The first is that we would eliminate the front yard setback variance, which you heard testimony on tonight. Number 2, to the mayor's point, I'll read into the record. There will be additional landscaping will be added in the buffer area on the southeast side of the landscape berm. The landscaping will be added in areas of sparsely vegetated existing wooded areas adjacent to lots 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, and 23. Approximately 40 trees, mostly evergreens, will be added to create a more robust screen to the proposed improvements from the residential lots, especially during leaf-off periods. The landscape improvements, together with the related berm along the neighboring residential properties, will be constructed and installed promptly upon initiation of the Phase 2 improvements or during the first growing season thereafter. And that was discussed, I think, at length at the last meeting. Point 3 is that there will be additional landscaping added along Route 206 frontage in the area of the proposed office building. That landscaping will add approximately 15 additional trees, mostly shade and ornamental trees, to filter the views of the office building from Route 206. Point 4 is that the illuminated bollards at the front of the proposed office building will be reduced from 17 illuminated bollards to 4 illuminated bollards. You heard testimony about that tonight. The remaining 13 bollards will be converted from illuminated to non-illuminated in the same style for security purposes. The illuminated bollard lights at the entry courtyard for retail buildings 1 and 2 will also be reduced from 21 illuminated bollards to 8 illuminated bollards. The remaining 13 bollards will be converted from illuminated to non-illuminated bollards, and the illuminated bollards at the raised crosswalks at the front of the 1400 office building will be removed and will be replaced with non-illuminated bollards. The illuminated bollards are dark sky compliant and direct light downward to the surface. We also wanted to make some updates regarding the proposed architectural lighting. I think most of this was testified to, not all of it. I'll just try to summarize it. The EX1 building mounted lights called out at C on the civil set of the proposed office building have been reduced from providing the lighting on all of the covered overhangs for the building to only the overhangs that are above an entry door. This eliminates 32 lights. B, the EX4 pinhole wall washers at the pilaster recess of the proposed office building have been relocated so that they face downwards instead of upwards, also testified to. Point C was that the exterior sunshades at the corners of the proposed office building were eliminated at the suggestion of the HPC, and therefore all of the EX3 uplight fixtures at those sunshades were also eliminated. D, one of the EX3 fixtures was eliminated at the entry canopy for the proposed office building. There was one remaining EX3 fixture for the entry canopy signage. E is the building mounted EX5 lights, called out as D on the civil set, on the east elevation of retail buildings 1 and 2 had been reduced to only providing lighting at the door locations for each building. This eliminates 4 lights from each building for a reduction of 8 lights in total. F, the EX6 sign lights for retail buildings 1 and 2 were changed from facing up to now facing down. G, the building mounted EX5 lights, called out as D on the civil set, on the south elevation of retail buildings 3 and 4 have been reduced from 5 to 2. This eliminates 3 lights from each building for a reduction of 6 lights in total. H, the fixture designation for all of the gooseneck sign lights was updated from type EX5 to EX5A. EX5A is the sign light version of the EX5 that was already submitted. 6, the color temperature of the proposed LED lights will not exceed 3500 K. 7, the amenity area at the rear of the proposed office will be updated to eliminate the proposed amphitheater and arbor on top of the proposed seat wall. The rear patio will be extended into a portion of the area previously occupied by the amphitheater, with the remainder of the existing slope and landscape in that area preserved. That was the motivation for that. The patio material is proposed to be the bluestone paver. You heard testimony about that earlier this evening. 8, the proposed trash enclosure for the retail buildings will remain in its proposed location northeast of the rear corner of retail building number 1 to maximize the distance from both the neighboring lots not owned by the applicant, as well as from public view along Route 206. But should a restaurant or food service use occupy one or more of the retail buildings, then an indoor trash room will be designated to hold the trash from the food service use until property maintenance personnel can take the trash to the trash enclosures. Restrictions on the collection of trash outlined in General Note 18 on sheet 1 of the site plans will be enforced in the operation of the project. Number 9 is the proposed redundant sidewalk in front of the 1400 office building and 1420 office building will be removed to reduce impervious coverage on the property while maintaining the historic pedestrian circulation on the property as enhanced by the new pedestrian walk west of the 1400 office building. Number 10 is the applicant takes no exception to the review comments in the board engineer's memo dated October 10, 2023, and will agree to them being included as conditions of approval, subject to the commitments outlined above, and of course, any modifications presented to the board during the hearing. Two other points that are not on the letter. Number one, we will agree to install bike racks. There was discussion about bike racks. There will be bike racks located in the proximity of the office and one bike rack located in the proximity of the retail. The next and last condition, which I think is reflected in the record from the previous testimony, but not in the letter, is that we will add controls with regard to the lighting. That was discussed at the last meeting as well, and we're incorporating that by reference also. So
You're talking about controls that can modify the intensity of the lighting.
Correct.
Over time. Okay.
correct. How to do, Mr. Walter?
Well, maybe you,
All right.
well, maybe you understand. So in 8, are they eliminating the trash? The trash enclosure
No.
that's creating the variance?
No.
No, they're keeping it, but the question was, what if there's restaurants? Wouldn't they want some way to?
Wouldn't they
have
want
trash
something closer?
closer to their building? And the answer is, this is the solution to that.
Right, so it would move down.
If a restaurant goes in one of those buildings, they will have to have an interior trash enclosure that's at least temporary for the storage of it.
Rather than storing it out there.
Until they can bring it over to the.
Correct.
There's no outside storage of restaurant waste or food waste. It's all, there'll be a closet or some room designated.
To minimize the vermin. Presumably. Right?
Very good.
We're not trying to maximize for.
Always good to know the lawyer's
Frank's not
agreed.
here, but. It's not in our master plan.
Okay, now we can open it up, right?
Well, I do have one question.
Yeah.
One of the comments that was raised, and I know this is construction related, and Tom, you indicated it could be incorporated into a developer's agreement. But a comment that one of the residents made, and I wish I had made that comment because I think it was great, was that during construction, all construction vehicles will access the site through Route 206 rather than some of the.
Yes, and we could, the applicant will agree to that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure that that's a condition here. If it is, so be it.
Tom
think
will
it should be.
Tom will put it in.
It'll be here and then that's, for now, that's good enough. But, and that's, it makes sense. It probably is.
It will need to be in the
Practical reality,
developer's
too.
agreement, but
Okay.
So, yes, Madam Chairman, we can now open to the public for both questions and
comment.
testimony.
Yeah.
So what, if someone can do both in their presentation.
Okay,
Questions of this witness and testimony.
Yeah. yes, please, come on up.
You're still sworn. Please say your name, though.
Kelly Bakovic. Hi, I just had a question. I just wanted to make sure if I'm understanding it correctly. In the letter that was just read, my concern is that originally, my understanding was that it was originally expected that, I believe it was about 1,200 trees be replaced in that buffer area. And then I believe the variance was to cut it back to a third, which is quite a bit, down to 400 trees, to put up a screen and also to have that natural buffer, leaving the trees that are existing and then adding. It was supposed to be replanting 1,200, but cut back. The variance was proposing 400, but now I was concerned that in the letter you were stating it would be only 40 trees. And so I'm just concerned that this, amount of trees that was supposed to be replanted and agreed upon keeps getting literally cut back to a point of concern. Not only.
Just wait, ma'am.
I can clarify that, Tom.
Yeah.
The ordinance would have required a total of 1,440 replacement trees.
Exactly.
The testimony provided by the applicant, which is not inconsistent with many sites that are developed in this nature, is that it's impossible to put that many trees on the site. They originally proposed 200. You heard testimony tonight that they're providing an additional 40 above those 200 in the area of those residential lots, and they're providing another 15 up by the larger office building. I can tell you that as Frank and I go through the resolution compliance review on this project, if there are more places to squeeze trees, they will put trees.
Okay, so the 40 is an addition to the, like, I was under the
Yes.
understanding it was more like 400 that was agreed upon, but I guess you were saying it's 200.
200.
So that would be 200.
So these are,
40.
it actually says in the letter, 40 additional trees in the area
Oh, okay,
behind or adjacent to lots 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, and 23. So
in
it's 40
addition
additional,
to
right?
the
And
200
mostly
that are
evergreen.
already being agreed upon.
Correct.
that we planted, and the ones that can be left that are already there.
Correct.
And then my only other concern is just maintaining that screen would be maintained from behind our properties to like the direct backing of the project, but also our view ever since the trees were taken down for them to do these testing pits. Now, like the privacy and the view of our yards have been affected because you can see 206 more directly. And I feel like we also are not feeling quite as safe or private to Route 206, because before having the trees there, if a car ran off or had an accident, they would be knocking into the trees, not our backyards. Also, our view from our yards was, more natural and private and more safe feeling because we didn't see Route 206, plus the noise of it and everything else has now, because of those trees being removed, the noise has increased and the view has increased of 206, and our safety and privacy, I would, and I feel has been affected because of that. So my just concern is with those trees that we were leaving there, the 200 that are being added and now the 40 additional, will that also screen us from 206 in addition to screening us from whatever's directly behind us?
Pick me up from here.
You might want to move
You might want to get it.
I'll stand next to you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the short answer is you're going to like what you say. When this is done, and I can say that as a landscape architect because I know what's on the plans, but you're going to get a nice triple row of evergreens. You're going to get the trees that are there now. It is going to be very, very nice. We have an applicant here that is committed to quality. It's going to be a very, very nice center, and you're going to like what you see.
Yeah, thanks so much. I just want to make sure, like I said, that it spans that whole, the whole.
That's what the
area.
plans show. The applicant is bound by the plan, so yes.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes,
Questions or testimony or both?
Hi, Sarah Nathans. Again, more about the trees. They're very mature right now. I actually think they used to be orchards back in the day because I had a pecan tree in my backyard. It's like 100 years old. So she said I have a huge evergreen also just right behind the fence. But how mature are the evergreens going to be? Are they going to be like little tiny scrawny ones that are going to take 10, 15 years to grow, or are they going to be more mature and fuller so that it does properly screen and, as Kelly had said, help deal with some of the noise, because the noise has dramatically increased.
The proposal is for 8 to 10 foot planting height. Those are substantial trees on top of a berm, so they'll have exaggerated height as well with the berm.
Okay. But yeah, just something to kind of consider. It does make a very big difference.
It'll be nice.
Would they spec them as like green giant arboretum that grow 2 feet a year or something like, would they spec them that way?
They will grow a foot plus per year, and they're all native plants. I see he's got some nice American holly mixed in here. That'll keep the deer away. They have spiky leaves, so I don't know if deer eating holly, but maybe that happens here in Bedminster. I don't know. But yes, it is a nice diversity of plantings here. It's not a monoculture, it's a nice mix.
And Paul, do you agree on the growth rate of the trees that have been designated?
Yes, generally those are a foot or so a year.
Anyone else? Yes, please, come up.
Hi, were you previously sworn? Were you sworn previously?
No.
No. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your name.
Cheryl Roden, Spencer Lane in Bedminster. I heard Mr. McDonough talk about this becoming a business center, welcoming consumer population, and also talking about the concept of shared parking with the retail area and the office space. But when I look at the plan, there is no circulation plan. There's a whole lot of parking spaces, maybe not enough, but there's parking lot. There's no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk on Lamington Road. There's no sidewalk on 206. If we are trying to build a village center, where are the sidewalks? And why are we allowing this kind of development in this area without sidewalks? You didn't allow it across the street on Lamington Road. Why are you going to allow it here? That's one.
I think the short answer is if you refer to the site dimension plan, there are sidewalks throughout. I don't know if that came across during the design testimony, but the plans clearly show sidewalks throughout.
And how do people walk?
Why don't you
from-
show, John, why don't you spend a minute just showing her on that set of the plans where you're, how you identify sidewalks with the dimensions?
Okay.
There are extensions out.
But there's none along 206.
There is no a linear, there's no lineal sidewalk along Route 206, but there are connections throughout the site.
And that's basically what I just showed our interested party here is there are throughout the center, not on the perimeter. I agree with that.
So just my comment. Number two, talking about the parking and the fact that phase one is the office building. And as Mr. Travaglini said, today we don't see a whole lot of people come into the office. We do not know what that will look like 5 years from now. We don't know where phase two will be 5 years from now. And I have personally had the experience of seeing Bedminster Township sued when people park on roads that they shouldn't be parking on. So I would suggest that there be signage restrictions, whatever you need to do to ensure that when there is only the office building and not phase two, you do not have overflow parking that cannot be ticketed on 206, because that's where it'll go. We all know that. Or they'll go across the street if they could find parking at AT&T. But something needs to be done to make sure that there's not an impact to the town if in fact the office is full and everybody comes and the contractors show up and yada. 3, I didn't hear any limitation around, we have 4 retail professional buildings. Can we have 4 restaurants, 6 restaurants, drive-through? What are the restrictions around that, if any? Let's see. Did I understand somewhere in this application, there's an on-site sewage treatment plant?
No.
There is not.
No.
Okay, I thought I saw something recently somewhere. Okay, thank you. And.
And there's no drive-throughs permitted in town, so there are none proposed.
Thank you. And I understand Paul's statement that there is a restriction with the stormwater retention on the site relative to the trees that can be replaced. But is the land use board going to consider offsetting the remaining trees that should have been replaced on this site in other locations throughout the town, even if it's not 1 for 1? We have lots of places we could plant trees. And then I guess last is this buffer area with the residential area. As I understand it, the applicant owns 4 of the residential properties that abut this development. Perhaps that indent, whatever you call it, it looks like the backyards of those properties are deeper. Is that correct? Deeper, more into this development. Maybe that line should be evened out. Because the applicant might sell those properties. And if that buffer isn't the same as the buffer down the street, those people are gonna wonder why. And why this board did not require that additional buffer in that area as well.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Thank you, Mayor Roden.
Thank you.
And for those who don't know, Ms. Roden served as Bedminster Mayor.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, please, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God. Greg Tania, Kania, 132 Somerville Road. I have no issues with the project. However, we just have to make sure that this is planned properly. Gentlemen, thank you for sharing all the information as you have. There are some concerns. I do have concerns about the parking. 1 and 2, we can have a total of 8 tenants there. And former Mayor Roden brought up, like, will there be a restriction of, hey, what if you got a Jersey Mike's in there? What if you get a couple other restaurants? Will there be a restriction of, hey, there might be 2? There might be 1. Do we know that? Anybody? So like all those retail spaces in theory, as of right now, could be restaurants. Yes? Just saying.
Can I answer? Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
They could be restaurants, but they're all 4. Let's say there'd be 4 restaurants. All 4 would be limited by their square footage. So the more restaurants you have, each restaurant becomes smaller, and the capacity for each restaurant becomes smaller with that. So I would say that probably the total capacity ends up being the same as to whether it's 1 large restaurant or 4 smaller restaurants. And anyone else who could just jump in there. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I think we've heard that for phase 2, the parking would actually be compliant.
Sure. I know the parking, when you look at the full complete plan, the north side of the site is heavy on parking, you know, and then we're depending on the sidewalks throughout the site, hoping that people are going to want to walk. I'm not one of those. I'm a little heavier, so I want to park right in front of that door. Nonetheless,
You can cross the street.
well, we'll see how it's going to happen. I don't know if this was addressed in a previous meeting. I may have not heard it. Where is this sewer going to go? Is it going to go and grace us right behind my house? Or is it going to the other plant down on 206? Do we know? where
There
it's
is
going?
only one plant.
This one?
That's not a plant. It's a pump station. It pumps it down to the plant in Pluckerman.
And we smell it when it's pumping. So it goes down there.
We're working on that.
Okay.
We got a couple $1 million. That pump station is getting fixed.
That's cool. That's cool. Let me know. I'll help.
Be careful what you wish for.
I'll provide the big-
You got a shovel.
No,
You got a shovel.
make sure that we're good to go here. I realize that there are stormwater plans when we're developing a site like this. But on Somerville Road, not only the properties that are directly behind this site, but including my property and all the neighbors' properties, we are wet. Like, you can go out here right now and you can just walk in the front yards and you sink. Okay? And we're not in wetlands. And it's wet. So, you know, during this project, I really want everybody just to think about, hey, like if this was your house and you needed to walk outside or something. Please. Move the water. properly.
Wasn't there testimony saying that the improvements were gonna reduce, 206 is higher than Somerville Road, of course. And I think some of the site improvements are going to reduce the runoff going east, right? Going east from the property and be more contained on the site. So whatever the situation is today,
Yeah,
it
we're
would be
looking forward to
improved
it.
by the site improvements.
We're looking forward to it. I didn't hear that before. Maybe I.
No, I think the civil guy testified to that last month.
If I can also answer you, as of 10 months ago, I was the owner of lot 22, which is adjacent to his property. And I had water problems for years, and I understand it better than just about anyone else. And I took Mr. Michelle to task last week on that, on the berm, on the runoff, on the water retention, and I feel comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. I think the 8 to 10 foot evergreens will be good on the berm. They do grow fast, but we're probably looking for about another 8 to 10 years till they get to height. I know this project back here, when we built this beautiful city hall, that these trees took 20 years. And we still get to see the beautiful lights of the building at night. Yeah, but the only other thing that was brought up at the last meeting that wasn't brought up again, would there be a possibility for security reasons? I know the trees are great for the ambiance, but for the properties, a fence hidden within the trees perhaps, or anything like that. Just like we have here, like nobody can just walk from this lot right into our backyards because there is a 6-foot fence. Instead of like maybe somebody would going into a BYO restaurant, having a couple BYOs of their own and wandering through trees into somebody's backyard, an extra deterrent. I just want to go and put that on the record that if my backyard, if I was in the Reykjavik's house, I wouldn't want just trees. I want some kind of fence there, especially having daughters of my own. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else from the public?
And on the online too.
Online, we have 2 different people. If you are interested, you can just go to where the reactions is. You can raise your hand from there, you let us know, and I can unmute you. We only have 2 people that are not with the applicant, so you just need to let us know if you'd like to be heard.
No, here.
Seeing any changes?
All right, I'm gonna close it to the public. And I think we're ready.
Can we just take a 5-minute break before we go into board comments?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, okay. Yep, take 5 minutes.
Don't come empty handed.
Let's go. Let's adjourn. Okay.
Re-adjourn, yeah.
Unadjourn.
Yeah.
Re-adjourn.
That's a new one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it's right.
Okay, we on? Me? Okay, very good. You want to sum this up?
Just a very quick, first of all, I think the board is familiar enough with the application and everything that's heard. Just on behalf of the applicant, I want to thank the board and the board professionals and the public for your attention to this application. We all know you're volunteers and you're giving to your community, and we appreciate that. I also want to add that we all want the best for Bedminster. And tonight you saw architecture that was prepared by Nancy Doherty, who tonight, as we speak, is being awarded as the Architect of the Year in the state of New Jersey. And rather than being there to accept her award, she's here. So you've got the very best architect doing the good work of Bedminster here tonight. And with that, again, thank you. We conclude our presentation and turn it back to the board.
Okay, and the board have any comments or deliberation they'd like to discuss?
Sure, I'll kick off.
Yeah.
When we met, I don't know how many months ago, with the prospective user who's looking to build, I think, as Rob Michelle described, international pet food company looking to locate its headquarters here. We looked at the zoning and we had a number of meetings, both at the planning board and at the township committee. Committeeman Hickey met with representatives from the residents back there. And we crafted a very specific zone for changing the, I guess what was the ORV to an ORVM, allowing for retail to be blended in with office campuses and taking a hard look at the FAR that we had deployed in these office properties, and then looking at keeping the office properties competitive in Bedminster. That big open lawns were not working. That was certainly not what today's office environment is for prospective tenants. All right, they're looking for that mix of uses. They're looking for some retail. They're looking for food options. We went through a lot of work to get there. And one of the things that we were most cognizant of and most sensitive to was the buffers between properties like the one we're talking, and there's another property that was also in Bedminster that was rezoned. Sensitive to the neighbors, to the residents. And what we did is we took a look at the existing zone, we took a look at the existing approvals, and we said, we got to beef these up, right? If we're going to throw in those other uses, we need to beef up the setbacks and the vegetated areas between residential properties and these mixed-use office parks. More so than what currently exists, more so than what's currently approved, and more so than what has previously been approved or in the current zoning. So we did that, and it was a long process. Once again, thank you, Colin, for meeting with the residents, and then thank you to Paul, Frank, and Tom, who worked with us in crafting the rezoning, and we had robust discussions amongst all ourselves. We had robust discussions with the residents, and at the end, we came away with a zoning that we felt very comfortable with, not just in terms of working within the Bedminster master plan, but also working for promoting the reuse and revitalization of some of these office properties. We did see that within a couple of months of getting that zoning in place and being approved by the Township Committee, that this application came forward. And the application largely, in very large part, complies with the zoning we put in. There are a couple variances, and the variances, especially the setback variance, affects the property that is owned by the applicant. So the, who's being offended by that variance? Well, it's the current property owner and the current applicant. The residential properties, the setbacks and vegetated buffers that we built into that zone are being honored by this application, and to some extent maybe enhanced as discussions may develop between the applicant and the residential neighbors. So we did get that commitment during the little intermission we just had. So we have good property owner, we have good residents, and we want to see them all work together. There are variances here, and I think we've gone through them. We understand that
I think it was best described as a temporal parking variance that may be the biggest variance, other than the setback issue. That when this project is fully built, there will be no variance for parking. And I'm satisfied with that temporal nature, dealing with if it is, and I think Tim, you may mention it this at the last meeting, right? That yes, the parking is currently skewed to the north. Well, that's where the corporate headquarters is going. So to some extent, on that temporal basis, that works for me. And if the phase 2 comes in, or maybe it's a phase 2A, B, C, and D, or phase 2-1, phase 2, 3 and 4 with the other buildings, that's when the additional parking comes in. So from my perspective, the application works. I think there's enough internal pedestrian means of getting from the parking areas to the buildings. That works for me. I'm in favor of this application, but we're through deliberation and certainly curious to see what the rest of the board has to say.
I'll open it up to the board. Anybody have any comments, questions? You're satisfied with the application? Okay,
And
Tom?
to echo Larry's points on the parking, it is skewed to the north, but I think with what they have today, it more than accommodates the existing office buildings and the proposed office buildings. So, and then when we get to phase 2, there's a handful of spots, frankly, I think less than 100 total that are necessary for the retail components. So I'm very comfortable with the parking after kind of talking through a little bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think the project is beautiful. I think there's people at Studio 1200, Ms. Doherty particularly did a wonderful job. I think it's a creative to the whole township to have something like this right at a major intersection in the town.
Anyone else?
I just want to say that one of my concerns going into this was the water retention plan, and I'm very comfortable with it. And it is a significant issue currently for those neighbors. And I'm hoping, and I really feel strongly that it will be an improvement for them at this point in terms of the water runoff.
Anyone else? No. Okay.
I just want to add also, we talked about how carefully crafted this application was, as was the rezoning that this board considered several months ago. Mayor Roden mentioned drive-ins, which are not permitted here. But other things, if you look at the ordinance very closely, things like strip malls and supermarkets, things that didn't fit with the tone and tenor of Bedminster are not here. And they're not in this application. I think there was a lot of thought that went into the retail, the types of retail that can be permitted here.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
I'm
Absolutely.
very pleased with how that turned out.
If the board is interested, you could consider a motion to approve the preliminary and final site plan and related C2 variances and site plan exceptions. With the phasing as described in the application and in the testimony. And it'll be subject to the standard conditions and to the conditions that they're bound by their representations. They'll comply with Paul and Frank's review reports. They'll comply with the HPC review and will return to the HPC as requested by the HPC. They will comply with Mr. Michello's letter, proposed changes in commitments or conditions of November 2nd, 2023, and the explanation of some additional conditions by the representatives of the applicant tonight. The lighting and landscape plan will be subject to the review and approval of the board engineer. They'll install bike rack, one bike rack by the office building, new office building, and one bike rack by the retail. They'll add controls with regard to the lighting and to allow the modification of the intensity of the lighting. And during the construction, all construction vehicles will access via Route 206. Those are the conditions that I had.
So moved.
Second.
And it is effective this evening, so the applicant is allowed to proceed effective immediately, provided all other requirements are met. So,
Mayor Jacobs.
Aye.
Mayor Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Carolini.
Aye.
Mr. Leonard.
Aye.
Mr. DeTrevini.
Aye.
Mr. Walter.
Aye.
Mr. First.
Aye.
Ms. Christie.
I need to abstain. Because I wasn't here at the
she
beginning.
missed 5 minutes, so we'll.
Everyone's got that.
Aye.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Scott? Are we allowed to say anything now?
Yeah. How do you do it?
2 meetings.
Wow.
So I'd like to introduce Scott Morris. And Scott, you can tell us who you're from.
Yeah, so my name is Scott Morris. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Fresh Pet. You might have heard a little bit about it along the way. But we actually started in Chatham, New Jersey in 2006. We've been in New Jersey all along. We have our manufacturing in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And we've continued to grow, and we went public at the end of 2014. We're now a Russell 1000 company, and yeah, it's been a great journey for us. So we look forward to working with you guys in Bedminster.
Welcome. to
Welcome.
Bedminster.
Welcome.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Yeah.
We need to give us some.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Good night. We are going to have an executive session, so just to. I do that.
You need to hang around.
Yeah, we have an executive session.
You're not. Are we having? World Series was over last night.
I'm counting everybody in. I'm counting everybody in.
I'm one of those old guys that still watches baseball.
Bye now. Take care now.
Right.
You know what, it's only. Nobody's walking around, so. Stay now, stay now. It's not a. Whatever.
Garibaldi.
Good to you. Okay.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Maybe I can get a ride home. He can't keep.
Pete, good night, Rob. Good night, John.
Great job.
Yeah. Shaking hands and kissing babies.
Yeah, right. More negotiation. Don't give away the baby.
Right. Do that.
We're not, we're going into, well,
Yeah,
we're going into executive.
we need a short, I think it's short closed session,
Yeah,
but we have to.
wait a minute.
Vic Lieutenant.
I read the email.
It's pretty good.
You guys want me to, I can pause it, or do you want me to? Yeah, pause it for a minute.
The motion,
Late meeting. He's going.
Where was that?
oh, great.
Yeah. No,
So motion to approve a resolution authorizing a closed or executive session pursuant to section 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act to discuss matters of pending litigation and attorney-client privilege communication. The matters to be revealed to the public upon the completion of all litigation and appeals and the removal of the need for confidentiality. Is there such a motion on such a resolution?
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please, Janine.
Mayor Jacobs.
Aye.
Aye.
Carolini.
Aye.
Mr. Leonard.
Aye.
Mr. Villiers.
Aye.
Mr. Carolini.
Aye.
Mr. Walter.
Aye.
Mr. First.
Aye.
Ms. Christie.
Aye.
Chairman Petro.
Aye.
Thank you, Janine. And we can turn off the recording now and the audio recording if there's one. So. Yeah.
All right, I move that we authorize Tom and his firm to enter into a consent order in substantial conformance with that which was circulated, which essentially is a 7-month hiatus for the applicant to come forward and attempt to consummate a settlement.
I'll second.
Sounds good to me.
Roll call.
Mr. Cavallini?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. Amelia?
Aye.
Mr. DeGiovanni?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. First?
Aye.
Ms. Christie?
Hi.
Chairwoman Gasko?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to congratulate you all in this last effort with the ORVN master plan amendment and ordinance change. Not too many towns are able to do what you did and do it in such a reasonably fast, but not unreasonably fast manner, and also coordinate it with communication outreach to the public. It's very refreshing and very, very well done. And I
Thank
think
you.
you should feel proud of yourselves because it's.
I'm waiting to find another town like us.
Me too. But don't tell me any of my other towns.
So during the break, I was brokering a fence for the property owners and they're gonna meet afterwards. There was a commitment from Fresh Pet and Advance to meet with the Reykjaviks, and they'll work with the other neighbors about a fence along that path line. And then as the Reykjaviks were leaving, so even though that they were vocal during the rezoning and they were vocal during the application, they said that they walk away from this process knowing that the board and the township committee was listening to them, took them into account, and they were extremely appreciative of the
That's
board's
nice to
effort.
Nice to hear.
Well, congratulations.
Does she doesn't need her dad?
Constituent service.
Yeah, that's very.
Right, and right, and she didn't need her dad, she was way better.
I love that statement.
That's what we do in the whole motion. So that's why I listen to, you know. It's important. Yeah.
Okay, we have our application here. That's our mystery. It's now scheduled for December 14th.
I will again
Yes.
send out an email probably towards middle of the month today. If you do plan on coming December 14th, you need to give us new plans. You need to announce it. I'll probably get a letter that says they're gonna be sometime in 2024, but
Just does anybody know, have they been talking to Bridgewater about their
Thursday night.
matter or about?
They have not heard it in the zoning board,
No?
according to my daughter.
Well,
but-
they're trying
but-
not to,
I know.
because
Yeah.
they know where that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I know. So,
okay, so it's definitely not done over in Bridgewater.
So well,
Whatever.
yes.
So I don't think we're on for December 14th.
I don't, I don't
Um,
think so.
Are we doing a meeting next week? I didn't.
no, I
Oh.
have an agenda that had advance being carried, but since that's not the case, you don't have anything.
So we get another vacation, huh?
We get the week off.
All right.
So well, I'm gonna scare Janine with this one.
No.
Yes, you are.
So when, Paul, you mentioned that our parking requirements are skewed on the high side. Is it time to re-examine those parking requirements? Not on this fiscal year.
Good, because we have no more money.
Because we're doing for that exercise.
Okay.
And now I understand why you're scaring her.
One for 225 is one of the highest. Available for state. What you know? One for 225 has got to be one of the highest in their county at least.
Really?
It is for maximum 4. I mean, before the whole COVID thing, there were places where we needed
you know, where we needed 5 because of the benching kind of stuff that was going on, but, you know, I don't see anything more than 4 in most places on an office for an office.
Oh, for an office.
Yeah.
I thought retail was typically 1 per 200 for the stores.
Retail's a little higher mostly, but, in Warren, I have
Okay.
1 per 5 for retail, but
Okay.
an office,
On a restaurant.
in many places, we don't even have 4 per 1,000 in long, well-established 80s development buildings. 3.5, 3.7 per 1,000.
Mhm.
You know. So you could probably go below 4 if you wanted to be, you know, trendy.
What do you think the Mallinckrodt buildings or the now AT&T buildings actually have in terms of, you know, you think that?
I have to look
Okay.
at it. I don't know.
Mallinckrodt, by the way, Mallinckrodt filed for bankruptcy again.
Guys, they were only gonna have what, 600 people there?
Pigs.
Yeah.
They all drive 2 cars.
Yeah, they.
There it goes. Those wealthy AT&T.
So I think they did squeeze a little bit more, when I heard them at some other conversations, that, well, you know, the number might be. Yeah.
So do we know?
You want to say with the clicker? Click.
I can do that. It's right near my house.
Do we know how?
Tim, you're not at the lake, right? So you can just stand there.
I want to flag them.
We'll give you a vest too.
Do we know how many employees are there at AT? We you say? Yes.
At least 800.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
I now realize though, AT&T's on a 2 or 3 kind of, you know, where they alternate days.
Right.
I think they've run out of space in other office buildings, so more and more people got assigned to Bedminster than they originally anticipated.
Oh.
So
And then, but I also heard that they were gonna assign some folks down to
Middletown,
Middletown,
yes,
from Bedminster.
Oh,
Yeah,
They
boy.
were doing a zip code analysis,
yeah.
so that they were gonna see how many of their
Sit down.
employees come from Middlesex or Monmouth, that they could push them
Push them.
towards Middletown.
My wife got a notice, by the way, 3 days before they were all supposed to report back to the office, saying, never mind, don't come. We're out of space. And she has not been noticed since then to show back up.
So it's a 3-day-a-week minimum?
And she
So it
wouldn't,
depends on the job.
And she's not asking.
and she wouldn't use a car.
Oh.
Well, unless she would.
No,
Okay.
she wouldn't use.
Suppose you have to get Wi-Fi at the building.
I told her that.
You can really work it.
Wi-Fi at the
You can say she's at work.
Yeah, exactly. Just put a booster on the building, we'll be fine.
No, that's great.
But it, look, it is interesting. Hold on, where are you going? You're going nowhere. This area, right? So that corner where we just
We're open
had,
now, yeah.
building, right? So we've got Fresh Pet moving corporate headquarters space there. AT&T full up in the Mallinckrodt space. Potential activity going on at the corner, on actually both corners.
Salary
there.
corner?
What's that?
Yeah.
The salary corners?
Yeah,
They're advertising that on.
I'm sorry.
on,
Wait, what
on
did we
LoopNet.
finish then?
They have the
the
building
White Curve
and
property.
everything.
Oh.
So there, we may be seeing an
It's not
application
approved.
on that property. We're seeing, right, we're seeing
Progress.
We're seeing
How big is that property, man?
2 weeks.
It has a weird little L.
Yeah.
It's larger than 2.5 acres.
I'm sorry?
It's bigger than you think it is.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
It's the longest strip that goes to the back barrel of Lemmy Road. I don't know how big it is.
Is that part of their property?
Yeah.
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 It's not very
That's
useful.
that big long strip that runs behind
Yeah,
eight,
yeah, that's
eight,
all theirs.
eight houses is all part of the corner block?
Yeah, if it's useless.
Does Advance own that property? No.
No,
No.
Wykert.
Whiteford owns it.
They were gonna build a Wykert office and then they never did.
Then they got approved for a bank building way back when.
Is any update on what's going on with the old Howland property?
Oh,
I got my
No,
notice, I got my
no,
notice a
just-
couple
just-
weeks ago. I
just
didn't
the
know what
notice.
this was about.
Just a notice.
Which
So-
property is it?
Oh, it's up by Rich and I, up on
So
Hillside.
Hillside,
Oh.
how big is the track? 12,
No. 5, 9?
It's pretty big.
6?
A lot more than I have.
Runs all the way back to
You're patient.
Elite, doesn't it?
No, not quite.
Not quite.
We can back.
Go ahead, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
Aye.
That's a new one too.
Over Jen.
Cat, I would take, yeah.
Hey, back.